The Sarentu Way, written by bluetheseraph. Chapter 3. Outside. Light, real light. It blinded me as I walked towards it until I felt my bare feet upon the grass just outside the busted pipe tunnel. The sounds of the rainforest. It was like hearing the warmest hello from an old friend you hadn't seen in years. But the moment you're together again, you feel at peace, content, like nothing can harm you so long as you have them with you. I felt my ears pricking amidst the sounds that suddenly flooded my senses, taking in my first deep breaths of Pandora's air. My nose twitched, taking in the scents of the foliage, the soil beneath my feet, even the smell of the water from the small river running near me. My eyes darted back and forth to watch the ferns and vines swaying in the gentle breeze. It couldn't have been long past dawn, judging by the sunlight peeking through the dense canopy overhead. This, everything, just felt so surreal. Was I really here? Was I really on Pandora? As I continued to walk, I couldn't help but freeze when my feet made contact with the cold rushing water that fed the river flowing down through the trees. I could feel a smile trying to work its way to my face. Bushes rustled ahead of me, and before I could have reacted, a small herd of hexapedes walked out to inspect the waters before drinking no more than a few yards ahead. I could feel my eyes widen just watching them, utterly fascinated by their frames and coloring, how different they appeared, some darker, a few lighter, all chalked up to the age and maturity of the animal. Incredible. Zoology had always been my favorite subject of Alma's lectures. I probably knew more about Earth's fauna species than the whole class, from the extinct to the living to the ones once extinct that the humans were attempting to revive. Nor had always made fun of me for it, not in a mean way, naturally. I knew he was happy I'd found something to take interest in after Ahari died. It was hard to find a joy in anything after she was gone. We had barely begun Pandora zoology before the evacuation. Before I could move to get a closer look, one of the smaller, lighter ones happened to look up and spot me, making me freeze up. The young hexapede then began bounding away down the stone-covered riverbank, prompting the others of its herd to follow after. My eyes still wide with wonder, I stood upright and slowly turned my gaze to the canopy overhead again. My heart was still thumping hard in my chest. The hairs on the back of my neck and along my arms were standing on end. I was terrified. I was exhilarated. I was alive. And I was home. I couldn't help it. The laugh just came out of me without even thinking. I let my muscles relax as I leaned my head back, taking in the spotted sunlight, then jogging down the river with my footsteps making splashes every fall. Quickly, I felt myself pick up speed until I was running in a sprint down through the water, the world a mostly green blur in my peripheral vision. The wind blew through my braided hair, jostling it and whipping it around behind me. My heart was drumming a million miles a second, it felt. My legs were burning, my breath was heavy. I was panting, out of breath not long into my full sprint down the river, but I didn't care. I was outside, I was alive, and nothing could have dragged my spirits down at that moment. Finally, I slid to a stop as I came to the end of the river where the forest opened up to a wide bank that bordered a lake, resulting in a cresting splash to form, where I now found myself stumbling for my footing. Cautiously, I shifted my eyes around to take in my surroundings, noting the waterfall that flowed down from the towering cliffside wall to my right. It was like being inside a basin down here. Everything was so lush and green and so richly Pandora. If I thought my heart rate couldn't get any quicker than it had been, I was sorely mistaken and was very much eating my words when I spotted the two massive hammerheads a few yards away, standing at the shore with their heads down to drink from the lake. A mother and calf by the look of it, I muttered to myself as I found myself in complete awe of them both. Studying their frames and movement, the gorgeous slate coloring of their hides, and the flattened skin fans resting on their large heads, I lowered down behind a large fern, peering through the slender leaves to observe the pair drinking from the lake side by side. A serene moment between two immensely powerful creatures. I would have sat there watching them longer, forever if I could have really, before the smell of smoke suddenly hit my nostrils. And quickly I was snapped back to reality. My eyes darted around until I found the source of the smell. A burning RDA amp unit laying lifeless on the ground, void of a piloting soldier, near what looked like a trail marked with trodden dirt and river pebbles. I could feel my skin begin to crawl whilst I just stared at it for a moment. What happened here? I asked quietly, as if the creatures and plants around me could give any answers. As if Ewa would somehow come to me and give me the answer I needed at that moment. Of course, none of that happened. Wait, where were the others? Alma and Noor, Telan, Solek, Rinella. My blood ran ice cold. Quickly realizing that A, there were dead RDA soldiers in the area, not far from the TEP facility, and B, I was still separated from my family, with no indication as to whether they were alive or not, and no clue as to whether any of them even made it out of the building, despite Solek's assurances earlier. I need to move, I concluded to myself, spotting the direction the winding trail moved towards, bent and curved like some kind of serpent. There might be an outpost nearby if I know the RDA. I should check and see if the others made it there. There I was, talking to myself again. Ahari's worst habit was always jumping into conversations. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop to seem having conversations out loud with just myself. I just had to start moving. So, that's what I did. Jogging further up the trail, I recoiled slightly, seeing two, scratch that, three more burning amp units, lifeless and scattered beside the path. My tail swished with anxiety whilst I simply stared at them. Glass shattered from their windscreens, blood dripping down onto the metal machines. These kills were relatively fresh. Definitely Navi, who ruined their day. I couldn't think of anything that would cause this much carnage in such a short time. At least I knew it wasn't an animal I'd need to fret about running from. But wait, what if the others had come through here? What if they'd gotten hurt? What if they'd been recaptured? Or worse, what if they really hadn't made it out of the facility? What if they'd been shot trying to escape? What if Harding found them? Or Mercer? No, Ika'ri, I grumbled, snapping my brain into focus. There was no sense in letting myself get so worked up. Think rationally, I thought. There were no Navi bodies that I could see, nor any humans, beside that of military RDA, and Solek was capable, that much was evident. He had spent his life out on Pandora, he used to be in a clan, he was raised a true Navi. Stop dreading, you're gonna psych yourself out. They're okay, they have to be, but you aren't, you need to get moving. Think, what would Ahari do? Matsmuke. I closed my eyes. Feeling a twinge of pure sorrow in my heart and a ringing in my ears began from thinking of my dead sister. I could practically feel her cold, dead weight still in my arms, like it had happened only moments ago. It only grew louder, steady and flat, and incredibly irritating. The loud, echoing bang of the bullet that killed Ahari played in my head like a bad song sung over and over, just to torture one's mind. What was worse, it was working. I felt like I was going to be driven to insanity. Why could this not stop? Why was I still plagued by these haunting memories? I thought I was fine. It's been so long now, longer now maybe since the evacuation. I just wanted to be able to think of her without these flashes. This torment my own head liked to give whenever the mere thought of her arose. It was beginning to become too much to bear. If you could only be here, Ahari. What would you do now if you were by my side? Or in my position, all alone? If I'd been the one to die rather than you, would you be thinking of me now like I thought of you? As if the memory of you would give me the comfort only your presence could truly succeed in offering. I bit my tongue and clenched my eyes shut tighter, trying to stop the fresh tears I could feel burning beneath my lower lids. This hurt, more than any punishment Mercer could have given me. None of us should have died tonight. I heard the soft, familiar voice of Rinella echoing in Navi as a memory suddenly came back to me. That night, she comforted me in my bunk when I felt like I should have been the one in her place. She'd spoken to me with such warmth and held me while I cried. She'd made me feel safe, the only one that seemed to be able to do so after Harry was killed. I couldn't fight the smile that suddenly danced its way onto my lips thinking about her. How wonderful she really had been after that night. In a somber way, Ahari's death brought us closer, and in a weird way, I was thankful for it. I know that, had Ahari not died, Rinella and I would have bonded naturally. I remember being drawn to her at the very least when I was young. She was closer with my sister, given they were close in age, but she had always appeared so calm, collected, and mature to me. Nothing got to her. She knew how to pick and choose her battles back in Tep, when best to fight and when best to cower. I envied her in a lot of ways, but those, her intelligence and her resilience, were the things that had made me look up to her so easily. The flutter in my chest was back as I thought of Rinella further, and that alone snapped me back into reality. I blinked my yellow eyes twice. My ears had stopped ringing, and my face felt warm while my body felt eased, almost like I was pounds lighter. Carefully, I shook my head to clear my thoughts, with my smile falling from my lips. Time and place for reminiscing. I looked around to refocus, taking in Pandora once again. Being here now, finally out of Tep and out of the RDA's clutches, I missed Ahari more than ever. She deserved to be here with me, more than anyone I had ever known. But what would she do? I thought long and hard, trying to push down the grief I now felt over the memory of my sister's murder. She would take my hand, I told myself as I gently moved to clasp my hands together and held them up to my chest. And look me in the eyes, and she would say, Ika'ri, you are braver than you think, but you need to get out of your own head. I couldn't help but snicker, opening my eyes to roll them a little. Yeah, she would say that, and then she'd tell me to relax, to breathe, and as I took a deep breath before my words trailed off from my lips, my eyes flickered up to something in the tree line, not far up the trail. It looked like a small building. An RDA building. A smile formed on my face. Well, there it is. I broke into a run down the path away from the bank, my bare feet brushing over grass, dirt, and stones, eventually arriving at what I believe was once an RDA fueling station, at least by the design and setup of the small outpost. But it looked dilapidated and overrun with plant growth. It had probably been made before the evacuation and been left to rot for however long we were asleep for. It didn't look like there were really any supplies around in any of the smaller crates, but I did find a few scrap pieces of various machine parts, all in a yellow container, and a packet of food for myself. Dry and likely still again, but it was better than starving. Carefully, I made my way up over some stacked cargo crates and over to the other side of the small depot building. This place was a trip hazard. My foot nearly caught on a broken crate as I regained my footing and tried walking out the open-aired side of the building, where the RDA likely would have taken in shipments to be stored inside. That was when I heard him. Ika'ri! A groaning call hit my ears, a familiar voice. Male, but not Nor or Talon. That only left. Solek, I called. I began looking around quickly to try and spot where he was. My ears pricked to pick out where his voice was coming from. Solek, I'm here. Where are you? Over here, by the tree. My ears caught him wincing out, my eyes finding him as he was mid sentence. He was propped up against a nearby tree trunk and he was holding his shoulder. A bullet wound. Not good. Hurriedly as I got there, I raced to my fellow Navi's side and knelt down beside him, unable to hold down my sudden panic. Solek! I cried, looking him over for any other injuries. Are you alright? I'm so sorry I didn't come earlier. I was. He cut me off with a nod and a wince. You were captivated, weren't you? He asked me, as though he had somehow seen through my eyes all this time since we were separated. Way to hit the nail on the head. With embarrassed reluctance, I nodded. He just closed his eyes briefly, remorsefully it appeared, before turning his gaze out in front of him, past me, towards the towering cliffs that held numerous species of plants. Now you see what the sky people kept from you, Sarentu. How does it feel to be home? I swallowed hard hearing his question. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing I thought of felt right. I was, in that moment, rendered completely speechless. Solek seemed to notice because he let out a short chuckle at my silence. You are at a loss, it seems, he said, my lack of a response seeming to be enough of a response itself for him. All I could give him in response was another subtle nod, while I looked out at the stretch of the great Mother's nature before us. Solek moved in an attempt to get up, but quickly cried out in pain before dropping back against a tree for support. Hand clung onto his shoulder, likely to keep pressure on the wound. My heart ached, and suddenly I was more alert than I think I had been since stepping out of that tunnel. How can I help you? I asked quickly. Solek had helped me escape, and not only that, he cared for my bullet wound, when he could have simply told me to tough it out and send me on my way. Please, Solek, you saved me back in Tep. Let me return your kindness. He slowed his labored breathing and slowly looked up at me as if sizing me up, evaluating me. My bow, he said finally, nodding to the long bow resting at his legs that looked like it had been constructed out of both sky people material and things made from the land. Take it. There are some arrows still in my quiver as well. I can teach you to make more, but that will have to come for when we have made our way to the resistance. I nodded, not questioning what or where this resistance was as I began testing the bow's weight in my hand, then picked up Solek's quiver to secure over my back. All right, can you move? I asked. He shook his head immediately. No, he concluded verbally for me before continuing. Depofed. I need a pod from a Depofed plant. Depofed, right. I nodded, but truthfully I had no clue what that was. Thankfully, he seemed to notice. It is a plant that grows by the water, he said. Take 2 pots, one for yourself just in case, and one for me. There should be some by the lake, just westward. Okay, I confirmed, running over everything he just told me in my head until a problem arose from the back of my mind. How will I know what I'm looking for? I don't know what it looks like. Solek groaned as he readjusted himself to sit up straighter. Focus all your senses sight, smell, hearing, all of them, he said. I had no clue what he was trying to get me to do in the slightest, but still I listened. Besides, right now, I knew the forest about as well as a human arriving here who'd never even heard of Pandora. They taught you to be human, Ika'ri. Allow your instincts to guide you, and you will see the forest as the Navi do. You will know when you see it. Not the most helpful advice, I'd admit. I had hoped he'd give me a description of the plant, but I suppose that was a human's way of thinking. Maybe Solek had more of a point than I wanted to admit. I just nodded at first before straightening my posture. I'll give it my best go, I said, sounding much more sure than I felt. I won't let you down, Solek, and I won't be long. Just sit tight, okay? He gave me a smile and a gentle nod. You'll be just fine, he assured me. His words were oddly comforting. Just trust in yourself to know what to do. I was immediately reminded of Ahari at that. That sounded exactly like something she would have said in this situation. Blinking quickly, I snapped myself out of my head. Solek needed a depth of it, and we needed to get moving. Who knew when or where the RDA would pop up next? This was nowhere near over. I had an inkling this was only the beginning. Carefully, I set an arrow on the bowstring and turned to give Solek one last look. I won't be long, I assured, sounding calmer than I was, as I turned to quickly jog into the woods, holding the bow with the arrow loaded. Instinct was going to have to be my guide here. I could only hope that it wouldn't fail me. I was not in Tep anymore. I was no longer the RDA's puppet or their soldier. Starting now and here, I was Navi, no matter how truly terrifying the idea of that was. I was home at last, and there was no going back. The gentle rattle of the chain link fence was the first thing I heard before the whirring of helicopter blades reached my ears. In the distance, not far from the trail I'd used to get up to the fueling outpost, I heard the low sounds of yelled words between human soldiers, RDA. My tail lashed as my fingers tightened around the bow's grip. They weren't far at all. Near the shore Solek indicated I look for the Depafet pots by the sound of it. But that meant they weren't far from where I knew the hammerheads were. And if there were two of them nearby, a mother and calf no less, then that meant the rest of the herd wasn't far. They were particularly territorial. I could use that to my advantage, I pondered to myself, before I saw two figures moving along the trees down the shore. The timing could not have been more perfect. The pair were walking together down the lake shoreline, seemingly aimed to inspect a Scorpion gunship I'd heard flying low, likely to drop off soldiers to patrol the area after our escape. And with any luck, they'd be dumb enough to shoot. I began to silently stalk my way through the brush, and by silent, I mean as silent as I could be, without stepping on any sticks or fallen foliage. Which wasn't easy for me to do, I won't lie. However, thankfully, the hammerheads were too preoccupied to notice me following alongside them in the bushes. I peered through a few fern fronds as I heard a soldier yell before the mother let out a deep bellow. I could see from over the foliage her skin fan lifting in a threat display. She'd spotted the sky people, and they had spotted her and the calf. They're definitely going to be distracted, I thought to myself as I watched the soldier pick up his rifle to take aim at the mother while she continued to bellow threateningly. What are you waiting for? The man in the amp yelled from near a large boulder. Shoot the damn thing! My ear turned when I started hearing thunderous steps approaching from about less than half a click away, directly behind me. They're hurt, I thought. I need to make a move now. My hand shuffled to set the arrow in the bow again, drawing it back until my elbow was parallel to my cheek. My arm burned a little holding the string back, but I tried to ignore it in order to focus my aim. I had one real shot at this, and if I'd fail, I'd die. Hell, I may die even if I succeed, but there was no going back now. I just needed to hit one of them, just one, and the mother would panic and charge forwards. But that was hopeful thinking, really. Tightening my fingers, clenching my jaw, I settled my sight on one spot and released the arrow. The long shaft whizzed out through the bush and sent a fern leaf or two flying with it onto the ground before it found its target in a soldier's leg. I watched as he screamed in pain, raising his rifle in the air before a round of about 5 shots fired in quick succession from his finger pressing down the trigger. The soldiers had little time to react or even look to check my hiding place before the hammerhead mother let out a deep roaring bellow and began to charge forwards in protection of her calf. The younger baby in question retreated back into the brush just behind me, wailing out for the herd by the sound of it. The perfect distraction. I had mere moments now. Find the Depafet and get back to the station. Easier said than done. I slung the bow diagonally over my torso and maneuvered my way to the edge of the foliage patch, looking to try and spot the Depafet. But I still had no idea what it even looked like. As my eyes scanned the shores, I felt a twinge of panic begin to rise in my chest. The sounds flooded my ears all at once. Sounds of the soldiers shooting at the calf. The mother's fierce bellows and cries as she slammed her head into the screaming Sky People soldiers, their yells and screams as she fought with everything she had. Like Ahari had wanted to do for me, for us. The quickly approaching sounds of the rest of the herd getting closer and closer with every second I was sitting here wasting, panicking and freezing up with a dull ring in my ears again. Come on, Ika'ri, you have to move. You can't freeze up now. You'll die for sure if you don't hurry. What was it Solek said? Let your instincts guide you. In that moment of realization, it was like time slowed down around me. At the very least, it's what it felt like. Noises silenced in my ears, the air felt calm, and I could breathe clearly. I blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. The world seemed to change. Everything now a vivid blue hue, like I was looking through the lens of a thermal monitor. My nostrils flared while I looked to my left at a short tree with a wide trunk and small buds sticking out of the sides. The buds were all a vibrant yellow hue, making them stand out. I knew almost instantly that that was the depth of it. I blinked once more and the sounds around me hit my ears again as the hammerhead stepped on the amp unit. Taking the chance, I bolted from the underbrush and slid along the moist earth to the backside of the tree, quickly pulling 2 pods free from the little cup-shaped growths they were held in. They were firm and smooth to the touch, and both fit well in either one of my large cargo pockets on the sides of my pants. Depth of it done. Now I just had to get back to Solek in one piece and we'd be home free. Hey, there's a blue over there. I think that's what shot Caddy. I heard one of the last 2 soldiers yell over the rifle belonging to his second being shot. I turned my head just in time to see the mother down on the ground after appearing to have been shot in the leg. Shit, I thought before quickly cutting off back towards the forest as a barrage of bullets flew my way, one I felt just barely missed my calf. Get back here! Shit! Run!